Cyberspace Battlefield Part 3. That's 3, for those of you who don't know French. Anywho, let's move on. No analysis of war can be done without a thorough understanding of the enemy forces and their composition, disposition, strength, centers of gravity, and terrain. You will find this was true under all of the famous leaders of war. Sun Tzu from China, Napoleon Bonaparte from France, Alexander the Great from Russia, Dwight Eisenhower, etc., etc., and it's still true today. Now, I used a particular phrase, center of gravity. Center of gravity is the source of power that provides moral or physical strength, freedom of action, or will to act. The center of gravity could be military forces or the will of the people to support the war. In cyber warfare, for a nation that bases its ability to win wars on information dominance, it could be their ability to collect, analyze, and act on data. So, we're going to look at the type of forces active in this battle space, what impacts they are causing, and what their motivations are. Understanding that these forces change quickly and they don't follow any set strategies, doctrine, or tactics, we will categorize them by their actions. I think the next couple slides might be somewhat surprising based on what I've been showing you thus far, so let's see. So let's go through the most active threats. Let's get into the threat spectrum, as it were, or the threat scape. There are a lot of folks out there trying to be, quote, hackers. Most of them are what we call script kiddies. These are folks who just go out and grab tools off the internet, I'll show you what that is later, and try to break into systems. They're known as noobs, as in newbies, because they're new to hacking, and, well, you know, they basically get into the low-hanging fruit and unprotected home systems. Some of you may know what this is referring to. He is the son of a U.S. congressman at the time, and he broke into Sarah Palin's email account during the 2008 election, and, you know, basically he guessed her password by like something like her hometown or something like that. Oops. Anyway, low-hanging fruit. So that was Script Kitty. Oops, my bad. Hold up. Wait for it. Bam. Alright, so that was Script Kitty. See right here? Script Kitty. Awesome. Let's see if this works. Sorry, I'm trying to make my special effects work, but like my special effects aren't rocking right now. Alright, whatever. Let's go down to criminal. Next come the criminals. As soon as we started shopping and banking online, the criminals saw the money and quickly followed to take advantage of this new opportunity. Many of these are professional organizations. If someone graduates with a degree in computer science, in many poor countries, the best paying jobs are with organized criminal gangs. Hello! The most famous is out of Russia, and is known for the ISP they use called the Russian Business Network, but don't let that name fool you. A lot of these are former military people, KGB, whatever, out of work, and now they have these very well-educated people working 40 to 60 hours a week trying to break into specific targets, such as Chase Bank, or Citibank, or Ford, auto cars to get the blueprints and latest designs of their cars. If they develop what's called a zero-day exploit, it will only be used against that one company until the job is complete. A zero-day exploit is something that is basically an exploit that hasn't been known yet, and then it's so there's no protection against it, and then bam, you're screwed. Next, we have hacker groups like the classic Cult of the Dead Cow, who released a tool called Back Orifice at one of the famous hacker conventions back in 1998, and these groups develop powerful tools, but the antivirus and the intrusion detective systems companies quickly analyze and post protections against them, but nonetheless they can be really quite annoying, and they can actually cause quite a bit of damage. And part of this is they do it for fun, in part. Yay! Possibly the most dangerous group is the malicious insider. Typically, it is estimated that they represent 20% of the threat cause 80% of the damage. Those studies, like the annual Computer Security Institute report, shows that number is growing. That's an annual report that's done by a bunch of researchers and stuff. And anyway, typically we group insiders as disgruntled or seeking financial gain. It's often hard to detect them as they are authorized users, so we must look for unauthorized behaviors when most of the security today is on the perimeter looking for someone breaking in. So pictured here, we have two cases that have been in the news as of late. We have Snowden on the left, who stole a bunch of stuff from the NSA, and Bradley Manning on the right. Both are claiming that they are whistleblowers. However, if they really were whistleblowers, there actually is a mechanism for people to blow the whistle in the federal government. These guys released stuff to the public that they weren't supposed to. So they could say they're whistleblowers all they want. I say, not so much. Anywho. Political and religious groups practice recruitment, influence operations, and often attack the opposing viewpoints' websites or networks. Commonly, this is referred to as hacktivism. One of the most well-known groups is Anonymous. Finally comes state-controlled or sponsored groups, which have become known as the Advanced Persistent Threat, APT. These can be military units or loosely affiliated groups who may receive direct or indirect support from the government. The ones we see in the news most today is China, which has been accused of systematically stealing information from both the military and the defense contractor base. However, there are many countries engaged in these activities, and some nations have in fact devoted significant resources to these capabilities, and we can only surmise their level of activities and capabilities. Now, as we look at the impacts of damage the threat can cause, we see a very different order. It's important to measure out incidents based on the impact they have, rather than the amount of activity it caused. So the last screens were based on the amount of activity. It would be easy to say that the Slammer worm, which is a case study, you can look it up, Slammer, had a significant level of activity and compromised a large number of systems. But when we consider that it had no payload to cause damage to our information, it suddenly becomes a nuisance. At the same time, a spear phishing attack, if you're not sure what spear phishing is, look it up, that successfully compromised the CEO of a Fortune 500 company would be an insignificant technical event, but would cost, or could cost, the company millions. It's not the volume, but the impact we need to measure. And to do that, we need to understand the criticality of the data on our systems. So, what are the most dangerous threats? Well, if we sort the threats by the amount of damage caused, the order is APT nation, state, insider threat, terrorism, physical environmental events, criminal attacks, hacker groups, unintentional, hacktivism, and script kiddies. Today, APT is stealing billions of dollars worth of intellectual property and sensitive military information. One of the most widely reported military incidents was the F-35, that basically somebody stole like several terabytes of data about the technical specifications and technical aspects, the blueprints basically for our most modern of jets. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically like massive project. It's actually it's the Defense Department's costliest weapons program ever created. So, you know, it's a big deal that the Chinese somehow have borrowed the blueprints. On the commercial side, an example that's comparable would be the Aurora incident, which involved Google as well as a whole bunch of other entities. And basically what happened was in 2010, there was allegations, quote unquote, that the Chinese government used Google's Gmail service to spy on human rights activists. In fact, there's a picture from the Google headquarters in China, in Beijing. Visitors left flowers outside the office. However, these were later removed with a Chinese security guard stating that this was an illegal flower tribute. But he probably said it in Chinese, not probably Mandarin, actually, to be more precise. But basically, they not just hacked into Google, they hacked into a whole bunch of, like 30 other companies, Adobe, and I can't remember there's a laundry list. If you look up Aurora incident, you'll find it out. But they basically hacked into a whole bunch of American companies and stole stuff. Tricky, tricky. Next on our list is the insider threat. It can be damaging in many ways. Some insiders embezzle funds or take valuable information with them, or even leave malicious code, like a logic bomb. Boom. Basically, a logic bomb is something that, like, you include code in the system that creates because all computer code is logic, right? If this, then that. If this but not that, then this, whatever. So a logic bomb is basically a set of instructions that is the equivalent of a bomb. You run those set of instructions or software, and it's like lighting the wick, and then bam. Maybe it destroys information or destroys their ability to know who did what or what have you. Or perhaps the person could bring illegally stolen information into a company when they are hired and expose a new company to lawsuits. That happens quite frequently. Next, as we look at terrorism, it is doubtful that a terrorist would conduct a purely cyber attack when they could use it to increase the impact of a physical attack by causing something like a denial of service attack against emergency phone services, police surveillance systems, traffic control systems, meaning you hack in and you basically make them not function the way they're designed. One of those that they could do that too is traffic control systems, which clever little boys and girls at colleges around the United States have been, hacking roadside signs and advising motorists that there's zombies ahead. Wah, wah, wah. Now, the next one is physical and environmental attacks, which can be both natural and man-made. For example, a simple backhoe, those like shovel-y things, those big truck shovel things, could isolate large portions of a network. Turning on the fire sprinkler system could flood the server room. Aw, snap! Heat from a fire or from taking out the air conditioning can wipe out a server room, for example. There are a number of ways to use attacks against facilities to cause a cyber impact, but these are generally very localized. Criminal attacks are causing a steadily increasing level of pain. It is becoming a national security concern as the general population is losing trust in conducting commerce over the internet. Identity theft is now a household word. Every scam and con has been converted for use over the internet, and both individuals and banks are losing millions each year. Actually it's really billions when you add it all up. Anyone can buy stolen credit cards, malicious viruses, and botnet armies on the internet, even those hard to find reputable vendors. Now, if you don't know what a malicious virus is, or malware, or a botnet, look it up. I actually have a list of terms that are available. You should probably take a look at those. I'm just saying. These all can be used as resources for a cyber war if that is the intent. Hacker groups are still around but have become more mainstream. They now have podcasts and attend hacker conventions. They release new hacker tools and vulnerabilities, but they are often shared with the security community before they are shared with the public. Unintentional actions are often as painful as the attacks, with user actions, patches, configuration changes, and loading new services that cause denial of services or loss of data. Like, for example, you upgrade your version of a plugin for, like, say, Flash or something, and maybe you do something wrong, and then shit breaks, and it's bad day. Here's one. It's really awesome. What could have been a harmless snap turned into a 222 million euro or $300 million mistake for a German bank employee who fell asleep on his keyboard while completing an order. The man was in the middle of transferring 62.4 euros, which is about $75. From a customer bank account when he fell asleep and apparently mashed the number 2 key, turning it into a transfer worth, wait for it, 222.22 euros, or 222 million $222,222 or euros and 22 cents. Yeah, that was bad, right? That's a costly nap. Anyway, these kind of problems can be mitigated through training, testing, and backups, but few organizations have the resources to do these correctly. Hacktivism sounds exciting, and we even have had events like the one in 2000 when a U.S. spy plane was forced to land in China. What happened was basically a U.S. spy plane was flying in international airspace. Somehow, randomly, I'm sure it was a total accident, a Chinese MiG fighter accidentally bumped into it, causing the plane to have to make an emergency landing. And the Chinese were really, really polite about it. What they did was they dismantled the plane and eventually returned it to us in parts. Oh, and get this for kickers. It was returned to us on a Russian cargo jet. Wah, wah, wah. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you it was a cluster. That's right. Now, what happened as a consequence of this was that there were a lot of cyber attacks from both sides, and no prosecution on either side, but it made for great media coverage. We can see the kind of activity between citizens, of different countries, or between political parties in the same country. The concern from a cyber war point of view is we now have multiple factions joining the virtual battlefield. It's like watching a soccer match or a soccer game with the fans able to walk around on the field during the play and being like, hey, man, why don't you kick that over there? Actually, I'll kick it for you. Another example of hacktivism that's more common is things like WikiLeaks. Finally, we have the noobs or script kiddies, who are the hackers that will grab well-known tools and just attack systems. They tend to have little to no understanding of the hacker methodology, which we'll address in a different week, or techniques to break into systems once the tool they are using doesn't work. Their biggest impact is that they cause so much data or noise that it makes it very difficult to find the truly dangerous threats. It's odd, although what I'm about to tell you is true, that most companies today spend the same amount of money on protection of all their systems. Let's say someone spends $1 million US dollars a year and they have 100,000 systems in their large corporation. That's $10 per system. Now, do all 100,000 systems have the same kind of info? No. Some have no critical or mission essential data, and others hold the keys to all the corporate proprietary information. Yet we protect them all the same. This is one area where the economic war should force us to invest in what's referred to as return on security. Investments by carefully categorizing our data based on its value and protecting it accordingly. So urgency and importance. So anything that falls into, area 1 should be the stuff we put the most amount of protection to. In area 4, low level of urgency, low level of importance, basic. All right, let's move on to motivations. Motives are varied, but generally are ranked by the amount of activity in this order. Money, espionage, skills for employment, fame, entertainment, hacktivism, and terrorism and war. Most hackers are motivated by money when they are considered criminals or not dependent on the country in which they live. Next comes the nation state or corporate espionage to gain some military or economic advantage. This is in an area where it is often cheaper and more efficient to conduct cyber operations than use traditional spies. Now, there is a high demand for these skills, and many individuals are getting into the field because it is a hot job market, but most don't have both a cyber and intelligence background. There is a lot of debate on whether it is smart to hire a hacker, but just like some banks that hire ex-cons to evaluate their security, many network managers think we need to hire someone who thinks like the enemy to beat them. The days when system administrators saw a spike in the number of attacks during the summer and on spring break are long gone. But there are still individuals out there hacking for the challenge, entertainment value, or seeking fame. Others see it as a way to promote their beliefs through attacking the opposition or simple vandalism of their websites. The smallest groups are also the most dangerous. There are organizations and countries that are developing the plans and capabilities to use the web to cause or increase the impact of terrorism and even full-scale wars. A couple final thoughts. One of the challenges facing most programs today is that there are no security requirements designed into the systems being built, meaning the hardware in particular. A number of systems that are fielded today never have security designed in, so it has to be bolted on after they are fielded. This results in both weaker security and higher costs. Another challenge is the time it takes to field a new system. There's a quote here from the Department of Secretary, Deputy Secretary of Defense, where he basically what he's getting at is that we need to change the acquisition system to move at the speed of need. This doesn't mean fielding systems that have not been through testing, but rather making sure we do the testing in a cost-efficient and effective and rapid manner. Moore's laws. If you're not sure from Moore's law, it's basically every 18 months, the speed of systems increase. Our capability to do speeds on these systems increase twice, and our capacity to hold data will increase twice and reduce by half the cost. That's why computers get faster and faster and cheaper. Moore's law demands that we keep our capabilities inside an 18-month window. For cyber attack weapons, the shelf life could be weeks depending on who else discovers the vulnerability or if normal patching fixes it. The generation coming into junior leadership positions, especially in the military, but also in government and other areas, has grown up with technology and wants the same capabilities that they have at home in the workplace, and are not satisfied hearing that every device has to go through an evaluation process that could take a year before it can be used in a secure facility. In the commercial sector, we are hearing that the employee is always right today, and the IT department needs to give them the tools they want to get their job done. So there are a number of factors driving rapid deployment, but they lead to a history of security issues, so it's a trade-off. It's difficult to get security right when the process was methodical. So how do we expect to build a secure network with a reduced acquisition cycle? Well, the one answer is focusing on risk management and understanding when and where to take risks. We need to spend less time analyzing the device and more time monitoring its use. We also need to understand that this domain will always be in flux and our systems cannot always be secure, but they can be well managed, monitored. As we look at how government contracts involving cyber operations are done today, we do see some trends. Overworked contracting offices have overworked contractors have little experience with cybersecurity, so they are challenged to address it in the requirements sections of the contracts they are developing. Most contracts for IT services have cybersecurity embedded as part of an overall task list of stuff, but it is not a critical evaluation criteria for their success. And it's often viewed that the first place you can cut costs is by dropping security capabilities because there's no perceived loss of functionality to the system. The pain is not felt until there is a public incident and the users demand a secure system. A few contracts are pure cyber contracts that require quantifiable criteria for selection, but the criteria are not very mature. It's still early days. It's a relatively new field. These contracts are normally for monitoring or validating the security of the network. The advantage of these contracts is that we are just measuring the security capabilities, so we will not end up with a strong overall program that has a weak security subsection. This also keeps the funding and management separate, so security doesn't get subjected to other network concerns. In a cyber conflict, it is vital to have the security team be independent. Well, that happened. End of presentation.